Hello, Dante here from the Octopus Club on the US Dalaran server. I'm going to be talking about the Unholy Death Knight. Now, Blizz has made some pretty awesome changes to the Unholy Death Knight. I hope that you all can appreciate them as much as I do. I know a lot of people saying that Unholy Death Knight's got a huge nerf or whatever because they lost abilities, blah blah blah, this, that, and the other. Well, I think it is quite the opposite. Even though they have gotten rid of some abilities, I do think that the Unholy Death Knight also has gotten a huge buff, just depending on how well you can play it. Um, so we're going to go over some of the talents here, and I'm going to demonstrate some of how talents are going to work, how the Death Knight should be played. I'll be explaining some of that in this video. Um, I'm sorry, I am also only playing on the PTR, not on the beta, so I can't really demonstrate how Apocalypse looks, but I will explain how it will work. So, to get started here, we're going to go over the level 56 bracket here. We have a new passive here called All Will Serve. Actually, we have plenty new passive here, but first one is All Will Serve. And what that's going to look like is you're going to raise your dead, and you're going to get a Risen Skulker. So, what it is a ranged pet. It's a hunter. Problem is, it kind of just stands there. See, doesn't follow me around. Now that could be, so now it wants to follow me, but for the most part, it kind of just stands in one spot, which can be a problem in a raid or dungeon situation. It can ninja pull things, and that's not always fun, and it can get you in trouble. But I do foresee it being very useful in a PvP situation, saying as Unholy Death Knights are mechanically superior and can lay down some pretty heavy pressure from a distance, especially if you're expecting to Clawing Shadows, which I'll get to in a moment. The talent that I think is going to be most viable is going to be Bursting Swords. Festering Wounds deal 50% more damage when burst, and all enemies within 8 yards of a burst Festering Wound suffer 12k shadow damage. Granted, this damage will be increased as you grow in level. I'm level 100 on the PTR, obviously, so this is just the damage that it shows. This is going to be the most consistent passive in my opinion, because you're going to be bursting your wounds constantly. Like, it's going to be happening a lot. So that increased damage is going to be really huge. The Ebb and Fever is going to be really useful if you have a lot of ads that need to die quickly. Because when you cast your Outbreak on a target, it's going to also apply Virulent Plague, which is also going to work like a Necrotic Plague, because your Outbreak has 6 seconds to spread to as many targets as possible, and then you'll have Virulent Plague on all sorts of targets. So again, Ebb and Fever will be useful if you have a lot of ads up that need to die quickly, and you can combo that with Epidemic, which we'll get to right now. Epidemic causes each of your Virulent Plagues within 100 yards to flare up, during dealing 20,000 shadow damage to the infected enemy, and additional 4,000 shadow damage to all other enemies nearby. So what that's going to look like, so here I'm going to cast Outbreak. It's going to spread to those 2 dummies, and I'm going to cast Epidemic. You get 3 charges. Granted, those dummies are level 60 dummies, so obviously the damage is going to be huge. So don't pay really much attention to those numbers. That's not what your numbers are going to look like in real time. So that's what that looks like. It's pretty cool. Again, in a situation where there's a lot of ads and they need to die fast. Now, for the one that I'm probably going to be using most is going to be Pestilent Pustules. So Pestilent Pustules, it's a passive that grants you 1 rune for every 6 Festering Wounds that you burst. Now, we don't have Empowered Rune Weapon as an Unholy Death Knight, so we really don't have that rune regeneration anymore, and which kind of sucks. But here it is. It's a passive. So every 6 Festering Wounds that you burst, you gain 1 rune, and you're bursting Festering Wounds all the time. So the rune regeneration shouldn't be a problem as long as you're running this. Also, really neat thing. Again, I don't have Apocalypse on my bars, so I'm not running in beta. But if you uh, have 6 to 8 festering wounds on your target, pop Apocalypse, it's going to pop all those wounds and deal all that damage, and then you get your free rune. And not only will that happen, but for each festering wound that you do burst with Apocalypse, you gain 1 ghoul. So you get another like army of the dead. They don't do very much damage, but it's still cool and it's extra damage. So hey, I wouldn't complain about it. Blighted Rune Weapon. It's an instant ability. Has a 1 minute cooldown for every 4 auto attacks. It infects your target with 2 festering wounds. Again, I don't really think this is going to be very viable because generating festering wounds shouldn't be an issue anyway. So honestly, I wouldn't even use Blighted Rune Weapon at all. Epidemic or Pest and Pustules would be the only 2 um, talents you should use in this bracket. For the level 58 bracket, we have Unholy Frenzy, Castigator, Clawing Shadows. Clawing Shadows is cool. It turns your Scourge Strike into the Clawing Shadows and has a 30-yard range. You can attack your target from a range distance. It's really cool. It's going to be really neat in PvP situations because you can lay down a lot of pressure, especially if you've got those festering wounds up. Get up in your target's face. Clawing Shadows, you're bursting those wounds and dealing lots of damage. Now that could be really cool in raid situations if, for whatever reason, you can't be near the boss a lot, or whatever, or you need to do multi-targeting. But I think Unholy Frenzy or Cascade are going to be 2 best bets for raid situations. Unholy Frenzy increases your attack speed by 100% for 2 seconds for every wound that you burst. So this is what that looks like. Got 6 festering wounds up now. So I'm keeping Unholy Frenzy up pretty consistently. However, it's only going to be really useful if you can keep it up for at least like 10 to 15 seconds. Otherwise, honestly, I would just go with Castigator. Castigator is a passive, and for each Festering Strike critical, it applies 2 additional Festering wounds. For each Scourge Strike critical, it bursts 1 additional Festering wound. Critical and Mastery are going to be the 2 secondary stats that are going to be of huge priority in Legion, I believe. So as long as you're doing that, you're going to be, creating a lot of festering runes and bursting a lot. So Castigator is going to be like your best bet here, I'd say. For the level 60 bracket, we got Sludge Belcher, Asphyxiate, Debilitating Infestation. No, I don't really need to explain Asphyxiate. It's the same as it was before, really. Debilitating Infestation, your outbreak reduces the movement speed of all affected enemies by 50% for 3 seconds. That's really cool in a arena situation. Might be cool in a raid situation if there's a lot of ads and enemies need to be slowed down. However, Sludge Belcher is going to be your best bet for raid situations and probably even PvP situations. Because what it does is when you raid your dead, you get an Abomination who has a hook. In a PvP situation, this can be cool because you can hook your target and it'll hook it to your Abomination, and then your Abomination can stun them. In a PvE situation, a lot of bosses can't be hooked, so what it'll do is it'll hook the target and it'll go to it. It's really cool. Really not super huge or really super important, but it's still nice, very cool, and will be useful in certain situations. But definitely this bracket is definitely more of a PvP bracket. But if you're more of a raider, just default to Sludge Belcher. For level 75 bracket, you get Spell Eater, Corpse Shield, Lingering Apparition. Spell Eater, your anti-magic shell is 20% larger and lasts 5 seconds longer. Corpse Shield, for the next 10 seconds, 90% of all damage you take is transferred to your Abomination. However, if your abomination is slain while this spell is active, it cannot be resummoned for 30 seconds. That's kind of a downer. Because if there's a lot of raid-wide damage going out, or in a PvP situation, the other team kills your pet while you're running Corpse Shield, then you don't have your pet for 30 seconds. And 30 seconds is a long time in a PvP situation, as we all know. Lingering Apparition increases your movement speed while in Wraithwalk by 30%, and the cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds. So without Lingering Apparition, it is a 70% movement speed increase and a 1 minute cooldown, but with it, it is a 100% increase and a 45-second cooldown. I think that in a raid situation, Spell Eater or Lingering Apparition are going to be your best bet. But also keep in mind that Death Advance is not available anymore, so if you rely a lot on a movement speed and you need to get somewhere quickly, Lingering Apparition is your best bet. And especially if you need to use it a lot, having that 15 seconds knocked off the cooldown is nice. For the level 90 bracket here, we got Shadow Infusion, Necrosis, and Infected Claws. Shadow Infusion kind of brings back the pet management a bit, because it reduces the cooldown Dark Transformation by 5 seconds for each Death Coil that you use. Dark Transformation is a 1 minute cooldown. Transforms your pet. Nothing really new there. However, it does not require stacks of Shadow Infusion. So you can use it every 1 minute, and you should. There's no reason not to. Blizz made it this way because I know that there are probably a lot of players that had issues managing their pet, keeping them transformed as soon as, or transforming them as soon as your pet went back to its normal state. A lot of people had issues, stacking runic power so that they can do that. It was probably just a lot of complaints, and Blizz decided to do away with it, which is okay. Because pet management was, even for me, kind of annoying. Now, Necrosis. Necrosis is a passive ability, and I'd say that this is probably the one you want to default to. Dealing damage with Death Coil causes your next Scourge Strike to deal 35% increased damage. You're going to be using Scourge Strike a lot. You're going to be dumping Runa Power a lot. So, it just makes sense to use Necrosis. Infected Claws, your passive ability for Infected Claws is that your Abomination's Cleaver attack has a 35% chance to cause Festering Wound on the target. Again, I'd say that'd probably be useful in a PvP situation, but in a raid situation, not so much. You really shouldn't have an issue of generating Festering Wounds at all, and it is only 35% chance, so you really don't want to rely on that to generate your Festering Wounds. So Necrosis is definitely the best bet here, even in a PvP situation, I'd say. For the level 100 bracket here, we have Soul Reaper, Defile, Dark Arbiter. Soul Reaper, in my opinion, is going to be the better ability to use here. It is a 45-second cooldown, but it does a massive amount of damage on hit, and afflicts the target with Soul Reaper for 5 seconds. So whenever you burst a Festering Wound on an enemy afflicted by the Soul Reaper, it grants 7% haste for 15 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. So, if you play cards right, you're going to watch your runes, make sure that you have 4 ready to go. Boom, boom, boom. 21% haste buff. Super big. You should only use Soul Reaper if you are able to get 21% haste buff. If you have issues with it, then maybe use Defile. But honestly, you shouldn't have issues with it, because rune regeneration is going to be really quick, and again, just the fact that you get 21% haste buff for 15 seconds is just huge as it is. Defile, all it um, is, I mean, nothing really much has changed with it. It grows in radius, but it also increases your mastery by 31, stacking up to 10 times. Lasts for 10 seconds. But it's very much like Death and Decay, where you can hit all targets within Death and Decay with Scourge Strike. So I'm going to lay down Death and Decay over here. I really love that that Blizz um, made Death and Decay more involved in the rotation, and that they added that nice mechanic to it. Because Death and Decay was just kind of one of those things like, oh, I get to lay it down. I mean, she laid it down every time it's off cooldown, but uh, I've seen a lot of DKs just forget to lay it down, um, just because it didn't seem nearly as important. It didn't really do a whole lot of damage, but it is very, very important now, especially in a multi-target situation, because you get that really cool cleave with it. Again, Defile will be useful if you have a hard time using Soul Reaper, but again, Soul Reaper comboed with Apocalypse is just beautiful. It's a 45-second cooldown. Apocalypse is a 1.5 minute cooldown, so you can use 2 Soul Reapers um, within that time. So first Soul Reaper used with Apocalypse, so you get your Festering Wounds up on the target. Pop Soul Reaper, pop Apocalypse. Boom, you get 21% haste buff, you get all of those ghouls that come with Apocalypse, and you do all that burst damage from bursting all those Festering Wounds. Dark Arbiter is neat. It replaces your Gargoyle. However, you have to stack up on your runic power before you want to use it. Because it does 1% increased damage for every 1 runic power that you spend. So now I got full runic power. Dark Arbiter. I'm going to dump all my death coils. I mean, really, you can dump a bunch of runic power within that time. So Dark Arbiter can do like a ton of damage in a burst situation, and can be useful in that manner. So really, if anything, I would go with Dark Arbiter or the Soul Reaper. Defile just isn't, to me, doesn't seem that useful, because we're already stacking a lot of Master, or should be, in Legion, with Master being that next best secondary stat, right under crit. So Defile, I'd say, is the last thing you want to spec into. Dark Arbiter is a great opener, 3-minute cooldown. But I think that I'm probably going to end up running Soul Reaper, just because I love how it combos with Apocalypse. Alright, so that's it really. Pretty simple. It's very user-friendly. Not nearly as complicated as it once was. However, I do love how it feels. I love how Blizz has made Unholy Death Knight very just like Unholy. You get to pop all those festering wounds, and you just do. I love the sound effects of it. It does massive amounts of damage, and it's gonna be just super super cool. And I do believe that the Death Knight is going to be the melee class to play. I even believe it's going to be better than the new Demon Hunter, especially if it's played well. In Warlords of Draenor, as we saw, Sub Rogue and Fury Warriors reign supreme over the melee, all the rest of the melee classes, if played properly. But I do believe that the whole Unholy Death Knight and probably even the Frost DK are going to be the best melee classes to play in Legion. Frost DK, I haven't had time to really play around with it too much, but as always, it's always been a really great face roll spec to play. You reach your full potential on burst damage within a matter of seconds, and that's really really awesome. So that's the kind of playstyle, if you like the face roll playstyle over the planning out playstyle, then Frost DK is the way to go. But I do like to plan out how I want to play my my character and how I want to approach an encounter, and making sure I'm using cooldowns at the proper time. Uh, I know to some people that's not nearly as fun, but I do believe the Unholy Death Knight is much, much more involved than the Frost Death Knight. I'm sorry. Um, Much more involved, mechanically more superior in my opinion, especially in PvP. And yeah, so I hope that this video helps. I hope that you guys enjoy the Unholy Death Knight, or just Death Knights in general, as much as I'm going to. And please leave a like, a comment, or even subscribe to my channel. Let me know what you think. Alright, thanks for watching. Have a great one.